Show me the money. A leading lawmaker and government watchdog group wants you to know how much money scientists and doctors working for the federal government received from Big Pharma. A new report from OpenTheBooks.com reveals hundreds of millions paid in third-party royalties to government scientists, with close attention to those payments and transactions during the COVID pandemic. CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski, joining us now with his investigation. Good morning to you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Jan.
Senator Rand Paul introduced this Royalty Transparency Act of 2024. It was actually voted out of committee on a bipartisan vote. What does that legislation do, and why is it necessary?
Well, it's necessary, Jan, because we need to know who's paying who is on whose payroll. A third-party royalty is when a government scientist in a taxpayer-paid government lab has an invention. It gets licensed to the private sector, think pharmaceutical company, for distribution. And right now, we can't follow the money. So Senator Paul's legislation would open the books on the flow of these third-party royalty payments. It's critical legislation. As a matter of fact, right now, you can be on a vaccine approval committee and your third-party paid royalties, your potential conflicts of interest, aren't disclosed. Senator Paul's legislation would fix that.
To be clear also, your organization has filed 2 federal lawsuits trying to get those details. Who received the money? Who paid the money? For what invention? How much? All kind of questions here. How successful were your lawsuits in federal court?
Well, these have been very successful federal lawsuits with our legal partner, Judicial Watch. And so, for example, during the pandemic, you and I, we got the feeling that big government was very close to Big Pharma. The third-party royalty database shows just how close they are. There's 3,000 companies since 2010, Jan, that actually paid 2,600 scientists over at NIH 64,000 payments. We now know that since 2010, $650 million of these payments flowed, enriching the agency and its scientists, and we need to be able to follow the money. So the only thing that we don't know right now is the payment to the individual scientists, and that's why our federal litigation, which continues, is so important, and Rand Paul's bill is so important to break open that transparency.
This is a massive amount of money in hidden third-party royalty payments, and you say these payments to NIH are potentially a big part of how and why the federal government responded to COVID. So talk about the obvious conflicts of interest, especially because scientists, as you mentioned at NIH, got royalties from the very vaccines that were mandated by the federal government.
So here's breaking news. From 2010 through 2021, we tied out top-line numbers of $325 million of third-party royalties paid. In 2022, in 1 year, think about this, we've now tied out $336 million in that year alone. And that can only happen because of the royalties from the vaccine. So here's some potential conflicts of interest. You've got the top vaccine maker at the National Institutes of Health. His name is John Mascola. And who knew that when he goes over to Operation Warp Speed to pick a vaccine, that he had been on the payroll of Moderna since 2018. You've got Moderna paying 43 NIH scientists just since 2018, and they pay them 235 payments, but we still don't know the detail. We don't know the payment amount to the individual scientists. Pfizer, they paid nearly 83 scientists 300 payments, but again, we don't know the amount paid to the individual scientist.
And this is all legal, by the way. This is what's so outrageous about this. So we've got these NIH scientists who are also working with the feds to decide that we have to be mandated to get a vaccine, and yet now they're also working with Big Pharma on these vaccines, and it's all legal.
Yeah, and this is why the legislation to open the books is so important. Jan, I think at the end of the day, the truth comes out. Dr. Rand Paul, his Senate legislation, it's bipartisan. It passed out of that committee on a 12-0 vote. So that has a real opportunity to help. Our federal lawsuit, we've got great lawyers. They're strong at Judicial Watch. We are making great arguments. And so far into summary judgment, we're cracking open those books and we are winning.
And it doesn't make any sense why they would not want complete transparency.
Well, unless you've got something to hide. Look, Jan, this is a database that hasn't seen sunshine since 2005. And so when we take a look at it, there are even 31 foreign countries that entities within those countries are paying third-party royalties. So this database has the potential, every single payment has the potential to be a conflict of interest.
Wow. It's great that you're shining a light on this right now. Founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski, great reporting as always. We appreciate you. Have a great weekend.